Hello everybody, we're going to work with a frottage today, and a frottage is just a fancy French term for a rubbing. And the reason why we're going to do that is we're going to try to become a little more sensitive to the raised surface of objects that would lend themselves to make a print. So here's just a simple stamp print. This is a capital B. You can see that there's part of it is higher than the other part, and that's when we go across it with ink, it will end up making a print just like this, and it needs to have this kind of raised surface. So to get in tune with those raised surfaces of some of the prints that we might do, where we're going to carve away to create that raised surface, we're going to do some rubbings to kind of see what happens when we have these different kinds of raised surfaces and what they look like. So what I want you to do is I want you to come up with about 10 different materials, and I would use a graphite stick, but you could use charcoal. Charcoal to me is just a lot messier, and so I would prefer a graphite stick. And in this first example, I just went outside my office and I found one of these leaves, and when I go across it with the graphite stick, the raised area creates an image. Now I'm using tracing paper, and tracing paper is very thin, and so it makes for a much better surface to do these rubbings off of. Now you can use regular, like writing paper, laser print paper, but the thicker the paper is, the harder it is to see the material that's underneath it. So here's the same leaf done with a laser print paper. So I would like for you to do 10 different rubbings and then start to put together a composition in the 11th where you're interested in how these different textures fit together. So for now, we've got one of them finished. Okay, I also have got this netting from a clementine box of clementines that I got for Christmas. And if you put the paper over the top, now this is very thin, but it will still make a texture. And you want to hold the paper still, otherwise if it moves around you won't get a good pattern or whatever it is that's underneath it. So that's what shows up from this material. I just got some cut pieces of cardboard, and these can be put down randomly, or you can start to put them into some kind of order. Same idea. So, raised areas create the image. And really soft objects, as nice as this feather is, this is a hawk feather from one of the hawks that lives here on campus, not everything prints up well. And that's also part of this assignment, for you to see that, some things, may look interesting, but once you put the ink down, you may not really be able to see too much, and they may not make for a good print. So here's the feather. The spine of the feather was dense enough, raised enough to make a image, but the rest of it was just too soft. So this would be an assignment that you would turn in, but this to me is a failed assignment because it shows you that something that's this narrow, that small, doesn't work very well. I've got some decorative cupcake holders that I've glued down to a piece of cardboard. Let's see how that comes out. There's a board game that had these little tokens that you had to punch out of it, and so I've got that old piece of cardboard from where those discs came out. It makes a nice bold graphic texture. And then you can even create your own by pouring some glue out onto a piece of cardboard, let it dry, and then once it's dry, you can come back with your paper. Let's see how that looks. So I was always looking for inventive ways to talk about imagery that I was wanting to work with. And when I was in graduate school, I actually went out into the landscape and did rubbings of the landscape. So these are rocks and trees and different materials that I saw while I was out there. And these last ones you might recognize. Like I did this is my boot with the eyelets and the laces. So it's just another way to explore texture. And so find these 10 different textures. Now, once you have a group of them that you like, what I'd like for you to do is come back and try to make maybe a larger image that shows some kind of composition, some way that they kind of work with each other. So I'm going to take a larger piece of paper here to get all these on here. And I happen to know that my phone's got this protective case on it. So if I start out with that phone, and then what I think fits into that frame nicely is that leaf. So I'm going to put the leaf in there and have that leaf fit right inside. And then outside of that frame, I'm going to have some of these textures from the clementine container. And not too organic, a lot of sort of geometry in there. So what I'm going to try to do is break up a little bit of that with some of this decorative cardboard element. It's going to be right here along the top. And then also to give it some grounding, I'm going to use some of these textures here at the bottom. And you can use just as many as you wish, but I would like for you to then take those textures and put them into one composition. So the completed assignment will have 10 different experiments with frottage, 10 different rubbings, and they could fail or they could be successful. And then the 11th image will be a full sheet of paper, a rubbing that you're incorporating several of these together. Photograph these, upload them to Canvas, and we'll talk later in Zoom.